Mahatma Gandhi once said, "To lose patience is to lose the battle." This is the Producers Lounge podcast, the best podcast online for tips and tricks on producing great film, television, and web content. Welcome back for Season 2, Episode 16, hosted and produced by GreaterAndGrander.com. On this week's episode, we're chatting with David J. Greenberg, who has produced independent features including What Matters Most and Seclusion. We discuss his producing experience and his new book, Screenwriting for Micro-budget Films, tips, tricks, and hacks for reverse engineering your screenplay. By the way, I was getting over a cold when we recorded this, so if it sounds a little odd, that's why. Here now is my conversation with David Greenberg.
In the time since 2 o'clock or whenever, I've been doing a rewrite on a screenplay for a friend, and I just have so many other things I should be doing, but he's desperate, and I was like, yeah, sure, this is what I do.
Yeah, I know the feeling. But yeah, man, well, let me ask you, since we're on the topic of getting overbooked. How do you what do you do to kind of establish boundaries in your work? To make sure
I don't. I've been writing professionally for 25, 26, 27 years, but I'm not established, and I'm, in the conventional sense, I mean, to some people, it might look like I'm successful, but to me, I need the work. So I almost never say no. So if somebody's offering me a gig, big or small, I'm probably taking it because I just need to survive. So I am overcommitted. Conveniently, some people who I owe work to are flexible. I had to go off last year and produce a film, and the people were like, all right, take care of that. When you're finished, get back to our screenplay, which I didn't do. And I'm doing another film in June, and I can't use the same excuse again. So I'm going to try to bang out the work before I get started on that other film.
Right. And that's really cool, though, that that you're getting gigs. I mean, I'm in a weird place from a producing standpoint, where I came up as a line producer. I know how to do budgets and schedules, and people ask me, well, how? Oh yeah. And people
I might need your help, but anyway.
well, a friend asked me, well, why don't you do budgets and schedules for your friends for free? And the problem with me is, I have so many friends who are filmmakers that if I did them for free, I would never have time to think.
Yeah. As somebody who does a lot of way too much for free, and has always done way too much for free, I agree with that, even though I'm guilty of it.
Yeah, and what I wound up doing was, a while ago, I set up a services card for myself, and I went through and I said, okay, what is the absolute minimum I'm willing to do this particular task for? And then I doubled it. So that way, if somebody asks, okay, here's my services card, how much I do it, but for you, I'll do a 50% discount.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. I'm gonna have to remember that one.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what kind of writing gigs are you doing right now? Is it mainly features, or?
Yeah, it's features. Right now I have 2 feature screenplays outstanding, but one is a new draft of something I've done several drafts of, and the producer is just being difficult. I'm actually going to write this last draft and say, last draft I'm doing. If you don't like it, I'm sorry you don't like it. It was a stupid story. No, I can't say that because she might. He, she, or they might hear this podcast, and it's been a very difficult project. So I'm going to do this one more draft and say I'm done. Then the other one is another project that I put on hold, and it's about halfway through, and I have to finish that. So yeah, just write for hire gigs.
Nice. So I'm curious, as a writer, like how are most people finding you for these gigs? Is it just personal? Mhm.
It's word of mouth. It's really crazy. As I said, yes, I have been paid a little bit to write some screenplays over the years. I call myself a minimum wage screenwriter. That's
Mhm.
pretty accurate. That's actually pretty, I'm not being cute or facetious. That's probably, when I think about it, pretty accurate. But the funny thing is, I haven't had to look for a job in I don't know how long. I have not gone hunting for a screenwriting job
Oh,
in
wow.
years. And something I used to do constantly all the time was always looking for gigs, always submitting to gigs. Sometimes getting them, usually not. There were jobs where I got the gig and the producer said, you beat out 300 other writers for this job. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty good.
Wow.
And that happened a couple times. But then I suddenly realized that most of the time I'm one of the 299 writers who doesn't get the gig. But
Mm.
I've gotten it, and I've gotten it a few times. That's happened. So, but I'm not rich. I'm not famous. I don't make a whole lot of money for these things, but I guess the talent is recognized, and either that or the ease of interfacing with me. I'm pretty easygoing and flexible about work.
Nice. And where'd you grow up?
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, born and bred, and he's still living here.
Nice, nice.
Are you California?
No, I grew up in a town called Stamford, Connecticut.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. hmm I have driven through it many times. I'll be driving through it again in a couple weeks on my way to
Nice.
Maine, going up to Maine for a few days.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Taking a few days off to rest and relax, or is it gig related?
It's not gig related. It could be gig related. It's not going to be. There's a couple brothers up in Brunswick, Maine, who produce films, kind of faith based and ultimate. And I mean, they're very right wing conservative, and which is not exactly how I would describe myself. But we somehow get along, and they want to talk about a project. I don't think they can afford it, but I might with them. No, honestly, family stuff. Just going up to see family. I have a bunch of family in Maine.
Very cool. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
And when you were growing up in Philly, when was the first instance where you realized I want to get in entertainment. I want to be a writer.
That's a really good question. So my parents were kind of showbiz or showbiz adjacent in their
Mm-hmm.
youth. My dad had been a professional tap dancer as a teenager.
Oh,
My
wow.
mom was an actress, through her teens and up through college. So I was raised in a very artsy environment. Um, I actually, I think I remember the first movie I went to, and I was about 3 years old. And it's one of those things where you're walking down the street with your parents and you're holding each of their hands, one hand in each parent's hand. And I have this vague memory of going into a movie theater, and I think it was a Charlie Chaplin film, and it really was like the stereotypical magic moment. I like this. And then in first grade, um, we had a guest speaker come to class with a video camera, and okay, I'm going to date myself and say I was in first grade in 1970. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a little while ago, but people back in 1970, most people were not walking around with video cameras. So I remember being 6 years old, 5, 6 years old, looking through the lens of this camera and thinking, oh, I like this. And then I don't remember when I started writing, but from a pretty early age, I wrote stories and I got good feedback. People liked my stories and my drawings. Like in grade school, people would sit around and watch me draw pictures of monsters and spaceships and superheroes and things like that. So yeah, I've always been a storyteller.
So you went from being born in the trunk to really quickly getting interested in it, and then you want
Yeah.
to, and then you went. Mm-hmm.
So I made my first film. I did a lot of theater, a lot of acting as a kid. But I made my first film when I was 9. It was a
Mm-hmm.
school project, and yeah, kind of hooked ever since. He's, total movie geek. Always was reading about movies as a little kid. So yeah.
Nice. And then you went to Temple, which is a well-known, very good film school in Philly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was one of the first film schools. It's one of the oldest film schools. I'm sure I got something out of it, but I mean, it's long enough ago now that I don't remember. I'm glad I went to film school. I'm just not exactly sure why.
Same with me. Same with me.
I got a college degree and I saw a lot of movies at the same time that counted towards for credit towards my degree. So how bad could that be?
True.
But I
True.
think I was a pretty unremarkable student. I got a
Mhm.
B- in screenwriting. But yeah, I guess I was just exposed to a lot of things, and it was just a fun environment, a fun milieu. Where did you go to film school?
I went to I went to two. I went to Chapman for a couple of years,
Okay.
and then I transferred and went to USC. So
Pretty
yeah.
good film schools.
That's what the debt collectors keep telling me.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I can't poo-poo it because um, the reason I got um at least one gig that wound up getting me into the PGA was because of someone specific that I met at USC, and then also the reason I got one of my first jobs out of film school working as Penny Marshall's assistant, the reason I got that was because I got an internship through USC, a high profile one at Copelson Entertainment. So
okay. Sure.
yeah, so
Great. That's a really good gig. I think.
oh yeah, and it's one of those interesting things because film schools. I had this one screenwriting professor named Eddie DiLorenzo, and he always said film schools, they sell you the sizzle, they don't sell you the steak, they sell you the sizzle. And then you think oh, film school will lead to well-paid job or well-paid gig or career, right? And there's an A to B correlation, but in fact there's A to B to C to D kind of connection, if anything.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and not everyone does it. Of the people who I went to film school with, I can only think of 2 people who ever worked in the industry.
Wow.
And I don't even include myself because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've just scratched the surface. I mean, I worked on a couple films that came out. Most of the scripts I've written that got produced have not been released through no fault of my own. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so I have friends who have been much more successful on a consistent level.
Mm-hmm.
I still do it. I can't think of anything else to do.
Yeah. What was your best experience from Temple before we move on to after film school?
Okay, well, yeah, it's funny. My father went to Temple too. Actually, my parents met at Temple, and my father said, "What did he say?" He said the classes got in the way of his education. He said he felt he learned more hanging out with people in the cafeteria and having conversations about matters of the day. So one of my favorite experiences was I got to see a rough cut of Martin Scorsese's film After Hours, 6 months before it came out, and it's one of my top 3 favorite films. And so going to getting to see that a rough cut, a work print of it with that still had the lights and the cables and mics in the frame was really cool. And you're watching it with a bunch of film students, and people were cheering at it like it was a sporting event, cheering at some of the camera moves. So that was a really great experience.
Nice, very cool.
Yeah.
So after you graduated Temple and you start looking for a screenwriter, did you know you wanted to go directly into screenwriting, or were you kind of on the fence?
I did not actually. I thought it was going to be an all-around filmmaker. I always knew that I could write, and I guess I wanted to direct. Um, but I did all the technical stuff. And even in film school, I realized I was not very good at it. I'm a terrible editor. I had a professor literally rip one of my films to shreds, like literally hold the film up in front of the class and rip it to pieces.
Wow.
I'm a bad editor. I'm a bad editor. I kind of like doing sound. And I think I was also just too lazy to be a good cinematographer. It's a shame. I mean, I have a good eye, but I didn't like measuring foot candles and apertures and stuff like that. And it's just that there's people who do it more. It comes naturally to them, and they do it better. So it's like it's them. But um, not long after school, so I was not really going for writing jobs. I got a job on an indie film up in Maine. Um, I did everything on that show, from, I worked for the line producer. So, I was setting up the tent for craft services, and lunch. I was, PAing in whatever department needed me. So one day I'd be in props, one day I would be camera, one day whatever. But there's also washing the producer's car and busy work and stuff like that. I finished that on a Saturday, and then the following Monday went right to work on another film in Maine. This one a big studio film. So on that, on the first film, the little indie film, there were times I was once on set for 45 hours straight.
Oh my God.
45 hours, no sleep, no going home, no brushing your teeth. And I wasn't getting paid either. I was an unpaid intern. So I was really thrown into it. Then I get the job on the studio film, solo on the ladder. I'm not even in the credits, but made really good money for a 22, 23-year-old kid just out of college. Did the same thing every day. So it was a really boring job. But bottom line is, at the end of this was, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9 months straight working on features, I suddenly thought, you know what? I could do this for the next 40 years of my life, but it's not what I want. I've now, at 23, I've worked in every position on a film crew, basically. And it happened to be at this time that it was really, I had new insight into the role of the screenwriter. And I thought, do I want to be on set for 12, 14 hours a day for the next 40 years? Or do I just, want to sit in my pajamas and write screenplays at home and have other people make them? And that's where I leaned. So after the 2 movies, I really focused on the screenwriting.
So when you make that decision to focus on the screenwriting, where do you go to start looking for gigs?
Okay, well, that's a good question, because I never thought in terms of getting a gig. When I graduated from college, when I graduated from Temple, I remember my dad saying to me, "So I guess you're going to move to LA now?" And I was like, "No, I don't think I am," because this is late '80s, so it was the indie film explosion. It was Spike Lee and Jarmusch and the Coen brothers. I'm like, there's all these people out there making these films in their backyards with their friends and families, and they're not using the Hollywood system, and they're getting out there. People are seeing these films in theaters, and I thought, that's what I want to do. So I stayed in Philadelphia, stayed East Coast, and the plan was I was going to write a screenplay that I could make myself. I was going to do my own indie film. So that more or less is what I work. I think I'm a little iffy on the timing. I know I wrote one screenplay in that period, although it might have been before. Really basic, generic teen thriller thing that, if produced, would have been a really unremarkable film. But then I started writing this script. This is a little bit later. This is 1990, 1991 or so. I wrote a script, really really expressing myself and my ideas and things I'm interested in, both thematically but also filmically. And I submitted that to the Sundance Screenwriters Lab, which was not that big back then. I mean, I think now they get like 5,000 submissions a year. When I submitted, there was only 500 submissions. And I was a semifinalist for that. So, out of the 500 people who submitted, they picked 24 semifinalists and then 12 finalists. I was not a finalist, but making it that far at Sundance kind of gave me some hope and made me think, well, I might actually be half decent at this. So then I went down the route of trying to be an independent filmmaker, making one of these no budget, grungy indie films.
Nice.
So I made a film. I made a short film. I started shooting it in, 1992, and then shot off and on for a couple years, finally finished it in 95, short film, 20-minute film. And I got an award. I submitted to a lot of festivals, was rejected by almost all of them. But the one that I picked up an award at was sponsored by AFI and Sony. So then it might be a little bit of a stretch of reality, but I do have an award. I'm looking at it right now that says my name, my film, and American Film Institute. So I started branding myself as AFI award-winning screenwriter. This is also kind of coincided with the widespread adoption of the internet. This is when people started using the internet. And so I started around the late 90s, early 2000s, I started looking for jobs online. And my first paid screenwriting job was through word of mouth.
But was it still local in Philly, or?
Yeah, it was local in Philly. It was actually a record company that was looking to create movies that would feature their artists on the soundtrack.
Oh, that's cool.
It was actually a hip hop record label, and the whole reason for doing the movie was so that they could have their artists do hip hop covers of 70s songs.
Wow.
So I did that. And then, so that was 9 years after college that I got my first paid screenwriting job. And it was another 9 years before I got another one.
Oh, wow. How did you balance things in between?
I worked, I had a day job or day jobs. I mean, at this point, I was married and had kids at this point.
Wow.
So I had responsibilities and things. So I couldn't, there was only so much time to run off and dream about being a movie star. But gigs started to trickle in. I estimate that between 2002 and 2007, 8, 9, I probably sent out 10,000 emails. That's a pretty accurate number. 10,000 cold calls. Anytime I scammed somebody's email address, I would write to them and say, AFI award-winning screenwriter available. I do this, that, and the other thing, and hope to get a gig. And seriously, of those 10,000 emails, I don't think I got 100 responses. And of those 100 responses, I'm going to say less than 20 turned into a paying gig. Some of them did turn into paying gigs.
Okay. So it really was hustling and cold calling or cold emailing in this case. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know if that's the way to do it, but that's how I did it.
What were some of the biggest mistakes you made during that period?
Probably sending out 10,000. I don't know, maybe not selling myself well, maybe not writing. It's hard to say because if you send out, I think if you send out 10,000 emails and you get 15 or 20 gigs, I don't know if that's bad or not. I think that's 20 gigs is 20 gigs.
Right.
So yeah, and at the same time, I still feel like there was another better way I could have gone about it, and I still don't know what that is.
Got it. Got it. So then, once you started working with producers more actively and getting paid gigs, what were some of the biggest, without revealing any names, of course, what were some of the biggest, let's just say, producers who didn't really understand the process? I'm curious.
Sure, there's been some of that, but there was a degree of there was a learning curve for me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize certain things. So what I learned from producers, one of my next paid gig was, so I got this gig, and again, it came down to me and another writer, and I got the gig. So they said, okay, here's the movie. They said, so somebody started writing this movie and dropped out. Then we, the producers, tried to write the movie and it failed. And altogether, I think they had 7 pages between the 3 of them. But anyway, they said, oh, that we want a straight up Lifetime Channel chick flick tearjerker. It's not exactly my genre. And I said yes. And they gave me some parameters. They just told me who the main character is, what happened to her, some of the supporting characters, and just said go. And it's probably not as uncommon as you might think. So that's where I really started to understand what being a writer for hire was. I only recently, in the last couple of years, heard the statistic that 94% of all paid screenwriting gigs are assignments. It's not just you sitting around in your bedroom coming up with a cool idea for a movie. It's a producer saying, hey, you can write, we need a movie about Care Bears or something. Go write it. So that's where I came to find myself being told what people need and then executing that. One of the hard lessons to learn, and maybe I knew it in the back of my mind, but it was still a hump to get over, was that just because you write a script and you do a good job on it and you think it's going to turn into a movie, that the producers won't mess with it, that the producers won't go in and change it. And so I had the experience. So I wrote this movie in 2007 or so, and I know they started shooting in 2008. I didn't see the movie myself until about 2011, 2012. I put it on, I'm like, and I see my name in the credits. I'm like, what is this movie? Who is this character? What is this scene? The whole thing. And basically, the director decided he wanted to be in it, not only in it, but be the main character. So he rewrote it to his specifications. And so there's very little resemblance to the screenplay I originally wrote. And that was hard to swallow. It's still a little hard to swallow because it's not a very good movie and it never got picked up for distribution. And I know in my heart that, and I'm not bragging here, if they had just done my screenplay, they would have had a really decent screenplay, a really decent movie. But that's how it works. Got it.
And then what interesting stuff do you have coming up on the horizon that you're excited about?
Well, it's interesting. So back to the first movie I worked on in Maine. I worked with UPM, Unit Production Manager, and this guy was great. He was so in command. Filmmaking is 90% problem solving. So as a UPM, you're juggling a million different crises at once. And this guy was really good, really capable, really on it. And I said to myself, oh, okay, this is what a producer does. And that's why I'm not a producer, because this guy's a whole other creature. I knew this other person, someone I went to grade school with and hadn't seen since college, found that she was producing. She produced some stuff for Quentin Tarantino. And as far as I knew, she didn't have much film background. I think she had been in politics or government. And the other guy, the UPM I worked with, this was only his second film. Before that, I think he had managed a restaurant in Manhattan. And I suddenly thought, well, if you can manage a restaurant in Manhattan, you can produce a film. So it's a similar skill set. And now, to this day, he's a very, very big producer. He executive produces all of Paul Thomas Anderson's stuff. He's done some Spielberg films. So this is a long-winded way of saying, now I'm producing. After years of swearing I couldn't do it, I didn't want to do it, it was better left for the really competent people, I found myself in a position where I had to produce. A friend of mine hit me up and said, hey, Dave, what do you think about the screenplay? I'm thinking about directing it. I read it. I loved it. I said, you have to make this movie. I'll do whatever I can to help. And he's like, well, like what? Like I wasn't expecting him to take me up on the offer. And it was written, so we didn't need a screenwriter. He was directing it, so we didn't need a director. I wouldn't put myself up for craft service necessarily. I just kind of sheepishly said, I don't know, produce it. And so, boom, I'm the producer. And the one good thing I did as a producer, and I'm only half facetious, I was not a great producer, not a bad producer, but I don't have all the skills yet necessary. But my first job as producer was to hire a better producer. I did. I was like, all right, I'm producing this movie. What do I do? Get someone who knows how to produce a movie. So I did that, and the film is really, really close to finishing post. It's just audio now, sound design and music. So that'll be done in a few months, and then in June I'm producing another movie.
And you want to give it a plug, like the title, or?
Yeah, sure. Did we bring a clip? I always wanted to be on a talk show. I brought a clip. Yeah.
Let's go to a clip. Yes.
In this scene, Scarlett Johansson and I are running from the monster. She trips and falls. I pick her up. No, that is called Seclusion. And I already have a distributor who wants to see it, but we're going to do our due diligence, try to get festival screenings, and not take the first deal that comes our way. I should mention that somewhere along the line, 1987, I graduate from college and say, nah, I think I just want to do my own little indie film, with friends and family in the backyard or something like these guys. Didn't happen until 2013. 2013, I finally got to make my indie feature, and it kind of went nowhere. But I'm glad I got out of my system. That's called Stomping Ground, in case your listeners wanted. And there's actually a couple movies called Stomping Ground. Mine is not about Bigfoot. I actually think so. 5 years after the fact, I entered it in a million festivals, didn't get into many. But then this distributor hits me up and say, hey, what's happening with your film? I said, nothing really. And he said, do you want me to distribute it? I said, yes. So now I have a distributor. But I think they're also distributing the other film. My film was called Stomping Ground. And I think there's another film called Stomping Ground out there. And the same distributor is putting it out.
Nice.
So yeah. So I think I'm the producing this film in June should be fun. And I'm actually not holding my breath, but working with this distributor. He obviously, his bread and butter most of the time is distributing films, but a few times a year he'll invest in a film. And so he has a guy in LA who makes a a horror film for him like every month or two. And there's a guy in Portland, Oregon who makes a film for him every couple months. And I'm not the most assertive, proactive person, but I was on the phone with him. I said, that's what I want to do. And he said, what, make a film every couple months in Philly? And I said, yes. He said, great, let's do it. So if things go my way, I don't know, I'm letting my imagination run away with me, but it kind of feels like, oh, I could be running a little movie studio in Philly.
And that is Season 2, Episode 16 of the Producers Lounge podcast. Thank you to my guest, David Greenberg, for joining us. You can find out more about him, including his new book, Screenwriting For Micro-budget Films, Tips, Tricks, and Hacks for Reversing Engineering Your Screenplay, by checking out the show notes and visiting our website at greaterandgrander.com. Our intro and outro music today was Boogaloo by Bob Hart. Our episode still image is by Ricardo Tomas on greaterandgrander.com. If you have any questions or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know in the episode comments. You can stay up to date by following us on social media at the handle GreaterGrander, all one word. Make sure to subscribe wherever fine podcasts are found, and also, if you like what we do, share this podcast with a friend who you think will enjoy it. Join us next week for more cocktails and questions, and until then, keep producing dreams.